Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 19th, 2024 work session for the town of Ossining. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So what do we start with? Okay, announcements. All right, we want to congratulate Thomas Chang, a senior at Ossining High School for placing second overall in the entire country in the Regeneron National Science Talent Search. Can't wait to see where he goes. As we continue the month of Ramadan, we want to wish all who observe Ramadan Kareem. The presidential primary election in New York is April 2nd. Early voting will be held at the Joseph G. Caputo Recreation Department, March 23rd to March 30th. And March is Women History Month. And to honor our local women, Bethany Arts Community has an exhibit curated by the town historian, Caroline Curvin, entitled Remarkable Women in and Around Ossining, which runs from March 15th to April 5th. So my council members and I went on Friday, and it was a great exhibit. Don't miss it. If you need help with your taxes, free assistance through the Volunteer Income Tax Assistant Program is available. For more information, call the United Way 211 helpline at 1-800-899-1479. On Wednesday, there are two author talks going on. One is at Hudson Valley Books for Humanity with 3 contributors to Superheroes on the Spectrum, which focuses on neurodiversity. And the second is at the Ossining Public Library, where local author Audrey Birnbaum will discuss her book, American Wolf, From Nazi Refugee to American Spy. Both talks are at 7 p.m. Thursday at 6:30 p.m., All Saints Church, you can attend a restorative yoga and sound healing, which is a combination of yoga, meditation, sound healing, and Reiki. Saturday, you can hear Enrique Hanin Quintet perform at Music in the Box at 23 Water Street in Ossining. This concert begins at 7:30 p.m. and is sponsored by Westchester Collaborative Theater. Also Saturday, Hudson Valley Books for Humanity is celebrating local author Claire Hilbert's first novel, Jump Rope Girl. Hilbert will be there to sign copies of her book. The event begins at 7 p.m. Next Wednesday, March 27th, the Ossining Public Library is hosting a virtual event, Barbie, the American Icon, which looks at the history of Barbie. Register for the event and Zoom link on the OPL Ossining Public Library website. And the library also has other events, including Chess with Chavez, Mahjong, Pokemon Club, sewing workshops, and more. And if you need help with your winter utility bills on the last day of winter, please go to the New York State Department of Public Services at www.dps/ny.gov/winter. Okay, thank you. Next is Mike here. Hi, we have a departmental report from our tax assessor, Mike Fawasian. Hi, Mike.
Yes, hello. Hello, good evening, folks. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. I'm just going to take a moment to share my screen. Bear with me for just a quick second here.
Right here.
Okay. So it feels like just a year ago I was being onboarded by the town. After a year of my time here in Ossining, I've had a great experience working with wonderful staff and other departments in the town. And we are preparing the 2024 tentative assessment roll. And there are a number of dependencies that we have to address after the new year leading up to the June 1st publication of the roll. And here are some of those dependencies. This is the kind of work that my office is doing at the moment, including the valuation of all 10,177 parcels in the greater township of Ossining. This includes mass appraisal work, calibration of our models, looking at market trends. We're driving around, working with our vendor as well to inspect any physical changes to real property. That would be permits mostly, but other types of changes that may have been unpermitted. We're working with the state of New York on their utility and special franchise values, updating owner information, of course, processing the subdivisions that we've received over the last year, and working with taxpayers where we have to settle certiorari or work out stipulations in value. We recently sent out a postcard for exemptions, reminding all of our taxpayers that if they are themselves senior citizens or know a senior citizen in Ossining who might qualify for the senior citizen exemption, that they should contact our office and we'd be happy to walk through the process. So that is my little pitch for those who are on. We have a May 1st filing deadline, and that includes for all of the renewal applications we would have sent out for firefighter, clergy, other non-for-profit, and senior citizens. But if anyone has any questions, we have a great staff from 8:30 to 4:30 every day, willing to take the calls or walk-ins to address any concerns or any questions you may have. And that's what we will be doing over the next several months leading up to the June tentative roll. And I've presented this pie chart and roll section count in the past. Not much has changed since 2023, but I like to start off with this because it really shows that we're a town of residential property. Also, of course, we've got utilities and special franchise and state-owned land and commercial as well. I'll show you that on the next slide here. Certainly condominium accounts for 18% of our parcels. We do have other miscellaneous, community service and public works buildings, other recreational and entertainment facilities as well, many of which are in roll section 8, tax exempt. But the majority of the roll, 95% of our assessment roll, is on what we call either fully or partially taxable. Also wanted to bring up the state of the Ossining and Briarcliff Manor real estate markets. This is something that assessors throughout Westchester County pay attention to, and not just this source, which is the Houlihan Lawrence site, but we conduct independent analysis as well to look at median sale price quarter over quarter, year over year, just to gauge where the market has gone. As folks may be aware, we're at 100% of full market value, and my office intends to keep it that way, where we can ensure equity within the assessment roll. So these trends matter to us, and we can see for the first time in the last several years, not another double-digit value increase. That's not what we're anticipating for the 2024 tentative roll. We've seen some signs of cooling. It's been a little challenging because the volume of sales has dropped so significantly that a few outliers on the high end can sort of give the impression that the market is still up 10 or 12 or 14%. But when you weed out the outliers and you look through the data a little bit more closely, you can see that 2022 really was the peak of median sale price. And that in 2023, things have been calming a bit, and leading into 2024, for the few sales that we do have relative to an entire year's worth of sales that you see from 2015 through 2023 on this list, we can start to see a little bit of moving in a slightly different direction, a slight reduction. Although for this roll, we anticipate a single-digit increase. The same trend we're seeing in Briarcliff Manor as well. Far fewer sales of arm's length transactions, but we're still able to pick up on the 2022 peak of the market. And then watching 2023 and 4 is still a reduction over 2022. And that's the type of data that we'll be using to update our 2024 tentative values. Of course, the state of New York weighs in. The Office of Real Property Tax Services conducts what they call a sales ratio study. And on that study, they give us sort of a score. And they look at our 23 values and they tell us, compared to the sales that have just occurred over the last year, here's your level of assessment. What percentage of market value are you truly at? And in order to maintain our 100% full value, it looks like this year we're going to need to increase values anywhere from 6 to 8%. We're still finalizing, and these numbers aren't set in stone, but it's a good place to start from neighborhood to neighborhood, anywhere from perhaps 6 to 8% as we continue to look through the data. And there are implications for the town and for the villages of losing our 100% status, things like state aid, okay, or unfavorable residential assessment ratios and equalization rates that can, well, be damaging to the town. So we're really invested in this reassessment process. And so we work with ORPS, the Office of Real Property Services, to make sure we fulfill that commitment to 100%. And here's generally the preliminary numbers. I wanted to share these. Again, they're not quite fully baked, but driven by data. We're really looking to refine this a bit in the coming weeks, certainly by mid-April. The typical neighborhood trend, anywhere from Southside Sparta all the way to our PUDs and Old Willow, Hudson, and Watch. We have neighborhoods with a greater number of sales that are driving some of these numbers. Hawks, Cedar, Chilmark, Indian Village, for example, we see a number of sales in there, 6, 7, 8% over the prior period. So we're going to continue to test these figures, see what we can do about getting those numbers right. One thing I am committed to, though, is more stability in trending between neighborhoods. We really are trying to avoid large tax shifts from neighborhood to neighborhood without any basis to do so. And again, in a market where there just haven't been as many transactions, we were being a little cautious about that. Next year, for 2025, we're engaging with our vendor to do what they call kind of like a reappraisal, a full rebaselining of values. And at that time, we'll pick up 36 months worth of sales and do a full model comp sales effort. And that will change values a little differently from what you would see here as a neighborhood trend. And of course, this time next year, I'll be spending a lot of time presenting on that because it's a little bit of a different process. Every 5 years, we have a major reval, and in the interim periods, we have these annual updates to stay at 100%. And so equity is very important. There are two types of equity that I'm committed to, and really it's the field of assessment we're all committed to doing. In reval towns, towns that invest in reassessment, you want both vertical and horizontal equity. So properties of similar physical and locational characteristics, they should be valued similarly. Properties at different ends of the price stratum, they should not be favored, low or high. And so when the state runs their statistical studies and we do our own in-house analysis, we make sure that whether you're a high valued property or a lower valued property or somewhere in the middle, that we're estimating the same percent of the market across the board. And so right now, the preliminary coefficient of dispersion and price-related differential are starting to look like we are we're right within the industry standards. And so that's something that we want to keep to. And that's all residential. Now, quickly moving on to commercial, we did have a number of commercial sales, and we use our last year values and we compare them to sale prices, and we're just trying to take the temperature of how close we are, looking for things like vacancy and recapture, looking for market capitalization indicators. And so we can get this information from CoStar and elsewhere. It's very, very valuable information. It pools not only information from Ossining, but also other river towns and the entire county at large. What these numbers basically tell us is that while we only have about 4 to 5% of our entire roll at being commercial, that it's still a strong market. We don't have very high vacancy rates in retail and office. Industrial has hovered around 10 to 15%. That's not unique to Ossining. That's what we see in Westchester County. But these are the kinds of KPIs we want to pay attention to when we're valuing commercial and updating their values for the next roll. And we're showing that we're about 3 to 5% lower than we should be on average. So we're going to likely see an approximate increase of commercial. And again, it depends from property to property, but about 4%. And commercial, the residential rental apartment building values, they're very strong. As we all know, demand for rentals is quite high. Vacancy rates are very low. And so we'll continue to see some growth in values of apartment buildings as well, commensurate with what you're seeing here in the numbers for the other commercial property types. This is the fun part. I always like talking about exemptions because it's where we can work with taxpayers, and we've been fielding their calls and walk-ins for the last couple of weeks. We get to meet individuals and citizens and actually get to help folks connect them to some of the benefits that they're entitled to. Some of the key changes and exemptions from 23 to 24, we've had a lot of changes. It's pretty unusual within just a year or two to experience this much legislative change, but this is what's been going on, particularly with the senior citizen exemption and limited income disabled exemptions. We see that Westchester County, the town of Ossining, both villages have adopted that higher sliding scale of income. Made a big difference. We saw 100 to 150 new applicants approved for tax relief who would have otherwise not been approved for that benefit. The schools have not yet adopted the higher income scales, but we still have many seniors taking advantage of the exemption, and there is still a benefit at the school level, just at a lower income threshold. This year in 2024, we're obliged by now state law to use the federal adjusted gross income, not the gross income that we've been using for many years. Federal adjusted gross is located on, well, for the folks who file returns, line 11. And there are some adjustments we make to it, but the FAGI is the number that we're using this year with caveats to approve or deny exemption applications that come in. Westchester County, the town of Ossining, the villages have adopted the firefighter exemption. A minimum of 2 years of service. That was a change in the local law. Briarcliff has maintained a 5-year requirement. And the Ossining School District apparently has also adopted a fire this year. So I'm going to get that final language from the school district, and we will apply the benefit to that portion of the bill as well as soon as we have the language. And last but not least, we're always thinking ahead. We're always trying to innovate, do things a little bit better, work smarter. So in terms of outreach, transparency, reaching customers, we're improving the website. We sort of had some success in 2023 in making the content on the website a little bit more approachable. But phase 2, and I'm hoping to see this in the coming months, we'd like to provide approachable statistics and graphs and numbers and maps to our taxpayers who might want to know a little bit more about the tentative roll, the final roll. Sometimes it's difficult in a chart or a graph to see what a map can show you. So that's part of our transparency effort, get more information out. To that end, we're also trying to do more taxpayer education. We had some wonderful interactions at the senior center pretty recently. I'd like to find ourselves at the library as well, offering maybe more online courses or tutorials. We're investing in training in the office. We're looking to data feeds to replace manual processes. And of course, always using analytics to have our process driven by data as opposed to anecdotal evidence. And of course, digitizing our historical records. These are some of the things we're trying to work on now and also in the next year.
Thank you, Mike. We appreciate all the work you do, especially the outreach you do for our seniors. I did get a postcard. I'm not eligible, sadly, or happily, depending. But it looked good.
I'm glad.
And it was attention grabbing, so that was good. And I know that even Al will drive around and knock on the doors of some of the seniors. He knows forget to come and file. So we appreciate your whole department for really looking out and finding the best way to reach all the people who are eligible for the exemptions, and anybody who believes they may be eligible, please give the office a call and they're more than happy to help. Any of my colleagues have any questions?
No, of course.
I was actually going to mention that my household received one of those senior exemptions for postcards. Oh, okay.
That's wonderful.
But I got it. I was like, hold on a second. We're nowhere near 65.
All right. So
but I was happy to receive it because it's
really
important that everyone is informed.
I'm really glad you mentioned that. And for all of our folks out there who may have been feeling a bit of a certain way that they received a senior letter, I promise you it's a state mandate. I have to send these out to 9,500 residential properties. So it's not a statement of where we think you are in terms of age. It's a requirement, but we're glad to do it because, as you just said, more information. Maybe you're not eligible, but now you'll have that conversation with a relative or a friend, a neighbor, somebody who could really use the relief in their taxes. So that makes me happy to hear.
No, absolutely. It's not the same as like getting an AARP card. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt?
Hi, Mike.
Hello.
Good presentation. I was just wondering, can you share that presentation with us on an email? I just
Of
wanna
course.
do it again.
What I'll do is I'll compress it into a PDF and I'll be happy to send it to everyone.
Good, good. All right. Thank you for the good job.
Oh, thank you very much, folks.
Okay. Thank you for joining us.
Have a good evening. Take care.
All right, our next departmental report is by Superintendent of Recreation, Bill Garrison. Are you here, Bill?
Yes, I can hear me okay? All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Just gonna be a little update on what's going on in the Recreation Department. We opened up our summer camp registration last week. We sold out our grades 2 through 4 camp at Vets Park, but we still have plenty of availability at our other camps. So people should still continue to register. We have not, but we still have availability for all ages. And summer camp registration will continue to go on right up until June. We are looking for camp counselors. They must be 16 years of age and older to work at our camps. We continue to be the largest youth employment organization within the town and village of Ossining, where we hire nearly over 80 kids to work at the camp, teenagers. So we're always looking for teenagers to work. We pay the minimum wage, which is now $16 an hour in Westchester County. So it's a great opportunity. We have many staff that are returning, but we've also had staff that are moving on. So we do have quite a few openings. All of our summer events have been scheduled. We have a great line of free family entertainment sessions that will occur in various parks. And those will be on Tuesday nights starting in July. We have our acoustic music series going on at Market Square. That's going to start Wednesdays in July. We have 4 jazz concerts, 2 in July and 2 in August. That would be at Henry Gordine Park. The July 3rd, which is the 4th celebration, is all set for the Riverfront on July 3rd. And we now have our River Jam concert series bands selected, and that information will be coming out soon as well. We're also looking to do, last year, if you remember, we had a Disney band called the Little Mermen at Lewis Engle Park. This year, we're doing something a little bit different, but keeping it traditional as far as making it a family event. We're looking to have an event. We're still trying to coin a name for it. Right now, we're looking at Parrot Beach, and this is going to feature a Jimmy Buffett tribute band with beach games, fun crafts and activities, steel drums going on from 5 till 9 o'clock on August 6th. So we're looking forward to that. The one big thing that's going on at Recreation, and everybody is questioning us daily on, is when is the pool going to open? And I've been saying soon for quite a few months now, but I'm hoping that we have an announcement very, very soon on regards to when the pool might be open. When we do, the locker rooms will not be available. So we'll be using portable restroom trailers with showers for people to use. Because of that, we have to lower our capacity for the day. So we can only allow 120 people into the pool per day. We're thinking that this is going to allow us to open up lap swimming. And on 2 days a week, the seniors swimming, their exercise program they do, and our swim lessons and swim team. We anticipate that it will be a few more weeks after the pool opens that when the locker rooms will be available, and then we can get back to normal operations. We've continued to add additional evening programs. If you stop by the community center on any given night, there's a lot of stuff going on. We are now offering free programs for teens in the recreation room, and there's like a different theme every night that's going on. Like I said, that program is free. Just have to have a recreation membership card. And they can just come to the front desk or they can buy that online. Well, we're looking forward to a busy summer coming up and getting out in the parks. I know that the Parks Department has been working on a number of projects, taking out the basketball court at Ryder Park. That was something that could not be repaired. So it was removed so that we can address some of the issues regarding the drainage there. So that's been done. We're taking a look at that. We're just waiting to on some approval from a grant to finish with start the implementation of the playground at Ryder Park. And looking forward to opening day of baseball season, which is April 13th. We're in good shape with the fields this year because of the great weather that we've been having. So as long as we don't get a rainy next couple months, we anticipate the fields opening up on April 8th. So that's kind of a good synopsis and update of where we are at this point. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Did you just say opening day is April 13th, but the fields open April 8th?
Yeah, so the fields, we want to get them open April 8th. April 13th is opening day for baseball.
Okay. Thank you.
That's going to be the day of the parade, and they do a little ceremony at Vets Field.
In which all council members are invited to attend.
And to walk in the parade.
Mhm.
And I heard that they're going to try to get the Osney High School marching band involved in that parade. So something new.
Oh, there you go. Any questions? Matt? All right. Bill, thank you for all the work that you do and all the coordination, especially the camps. We appreciate it, and we'll continue working together to get that Ryder Park done and all the other projects that we have in the list. Make it our parks
Yep.
as accessible and enjoyable as possible.
All right. Well, thank you.
Okay. All right. Next. Hi, Valerie. We're joined by Valerie Menastra, our planner, to discuss a whole bunch of projects that we've been working on for a long time, or that have been in the works for a while. So, well, the first one isn't, it's the wetlands consultant. So go ahead, please. Or do you need a? Sorry.
Great, thank you. So just for the board and the public's information, at the planning board and the building department, at times, certain projects require either wetlands permits or a review of wetlands reports, and also review of planting plans, and as well as confirmation of wetlands mitigation plans, and as well as site visits to confirm that plantings have been planted appropriately, as well as that mitigation plans are being adhered to. The town of Ossining had a longtime wetlands consultant, and he recently retired. And so we are looking to send out what we're proposing is a request for qualifications. So it's not necessarily only one person, but it could be a list of people for which the town could rely upon or request them to become part of a particular project. One of the benefits of having a request for qualification or a list is that at times, it's a small field. So at times a developer might actually end up hiring one of the wetlands consultants to actually do delineations or wetland studies on their site. And then therefore they would be conflicted out to work on a particular project for the town of Ossining. So having a list would allow for some flexibility. And then also if for some reason somebody's unavailable to take on a particular project, we can look for somebody else on the list to work on that particular project. So I provided you a draft of the request for qualifications, and basically, we're asking people to provide some information on their technical qualifications, their relevant experience, their availability. Also, we've specifically identified looking for a local a local consultant, therefore they would be able to easily go out to site visits, and it wouldn't be, too expensive for the applicants, because ultimately a lot of this would be escrowed by the applicant for their particular project. So if the board is interested in moving forward, we can finalize this, put some dates in, and then put it out for RFQ.
Okay, thank you. I'm definitely interested. We're having, like you said, of wetland specialists available for projects is good, and I'm sure each of them has their own special qualifications as well, so, and do any board members have any?
Thank you, Val. Just wondering, how often does a wetlands consultant come up on a project? I mean,
Well, it depends on the particular projects. But a few times a year. And then you have some projects that have mitigation plans in place. So that require yearly inspections for like 5 years or so before the mitigation plan is no longer necessary. So, and then that require yearly visits as well. So it just depends, but it's usually your larger projects that have some sort of mitigation plan associated with it. And it might not necessarily just be wetlands, but it also could be just landscaping as well.
and this will be just for us town incorporated part of the town.
That's correct.
Good idea.
Questions? No? Thank you
Okay.
for putting that together for us and lending us yours while we search.
Yes. Yes. So in my firm, we do have somebody, but they're from the Long Island office. So, and we're specifically looking for somebody more local, but there's always a backup internally in case there is a backup right now until such time when the town has their qualifications.
All right, moving on. We have a grant to look into all of our open spaces. And I'll let you describe.
Yes, so a few years ago, under when Supervisor Levenberg was here, we put forth, we were coming towards the end of the comprehensive plan. And one of the goals in the comprehensive plan was to look at potentially trying to do an open space plan and also identify some other potential trail networks, within the town. And part of that was also to look at, are there ways in terms of not necessarily just acquiring properties, but actually looking at it from different potential like land use regulations or different zoning techniques that could, if in effect, preserve some of the more environmentally sensitive areas, but also allow still use of that land and not necessarily having to purchase the properties. And so we put together a proposal and sent it to the Greenway Compact grants to undertake an open space plan, which would really look at your remaining undeveloped lands as well as some of your trail networks, and to see, like, for example, the Environmental Advisory Council has always been looking to try to connect some of your parks by some sort of trail network as well. So it was to look at a number of these things and come up with techniques in order to help preserve some of the larger tracts in terms of like ultimately the development that could take place on those sites, and especially your environmental resources. So the town was awarded this. It was a total of $25,000. The Greenway Compact grant was for $10,000, and the town was going to provide a match of $15,000. The town board at that time authorized the submission of the grant. But clearly board members have changed, and now the Greenway has contacted the town and said, are you going to move forward with this particular project? And we've been, it's been a little bit of a busy couple years. We've changed administration and stuff. So we're coming back to the board to see if this is a project you want to move forward with. And if so, we can let the Greenway Compact grant administrator know that we're going to move forward and we can start work on that.
I know I'm interested in moving forward. I think it's important. And I know we had already identified where our properties that would fit this criteria would be, and I'm very interested in designing zoning to protect and preserve as much open space as we can. So,
Yeah, I was supportive then and still supportive now.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So how long is this supposed to take? You said?
So we anticipate this probably being like probably less than a year, depending upon, it also depends upon, how often, like, there will probably be some sort of like committee associated with this. And so, but I think you can get it done within a year at the maximum.
Yeah, I was just concerned that, maybe other projects shouldn't come forward yet until we get the study back just to see. That's all.
Right, so I
Here.
think, so I think to a larger extent, I wouldn't necessarily recommend a moratorium or anything like that. I think what this will do is actually identify particular areas within the town that you want to kind of conserve. And it will also, the town is in, and you're going to be seeing some drafts of potential zoning amendments shortly. But this will also kind of dovetail nicely to that work of being able to provide like maybe some sort of conservation overlay and really identifying what areas and what properties would, you'd want to potentially look at that. There's also, which kind of is the next topic, there's also other overlays that are already being discussed within the town. So some of that would also be worked into this particular plan, and maybe some of it, while we have an overall cost of like 25,000, we might not necessarily need to expend all that, depending upon, once we start to diving into it, how many properties really remain in terms of, especially the natural resources and some of the inventory. And some work has already been done as part of your comprehensive plan, and there's already information out there. So a lot of it will be pretty efficient in terms of being able to develop this.
and we can take some of the language from some of the other overlay zones and apply it to.
That's correct. And some of it will also be just looking at like, do you cluster certain areas, require clustering as opposed to your traditional subdivision? Maybe there's particular properties within certain zoning districts that you might want to put additional restrictions on because they happen to have, environmentally sensitive resources, but yet it's, a business, zoning district or whatever. So those are things that we'll be able to look at as well as part of this process.
I have a question. So in looking through these 45 pages.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, I accidentally.
No, I don't say that because it was good for me to look through it and like try to understand, in my own layman terms, what this is about. But what I'm trying to figure out is when you're talking about open space, like to me, that's such a broad generalization. And are we only talking about like public land? Or is this also like when we're talking about open space, like what does that look like?
Right, so really, it's more or less in an open space preservation plan, it is a very broad term, but it does include both public and private. And it's usually undeveloped lands as opposed to developed lands, or it could be lands that are part of like a larger subdivision area that particularly have environmentally sensitive resources and don't have any sort of conservation easement or not protected. And those could also be identified. I mean, some of it is also just identifying areas of environmentally sensitive resources so that if for some reason a project does become before the planning board, they could also say, we really definitely don't want to have this particular area developed upon, or we want some sort of conservation easement. So it doesn't necessarily mean that, as part of the techniques, and when you look at an open space plan, it looks at all the different techniques that a town could employ and then kind of prioritizes which, properties or areas of the town you want to focus your efforts on.
So, and I don't know if this is also a question for Christy. Once we identify which parcels of land that we want to quote unquote protect, are we going to be developing a resolution about this, and identifying like where this land is located? Like, what is the final product of this whole thing?
Right, so and typically in an open space plan, a final, and I can turn it over to Christie as well, so to talk about, but a lot of times it's identifying not only just the areas within the community, but it also provides you different techniques. So it doesn't necessarily have to be only regulations. It could be, you might want to acquire some properties. It could be something as terms of like, what we were saying before, you could even look at like doing an open space fund. There's a number of different techniques, and that's part of it. What it would identify the different techniques that the town could employ. So it's not necessarily a wholesale of like, you can never develop a particular property, or it really just identifies what areas you want to protect, and then also in terms of priorities.
Does it identify it by like block and lot?
It can, you know what I mean? Because we do have the tax ID. So, and a lot of it is also tends to be focused on, so for example, in one community we worked on and we developed an overlay specifically focused on areas where there was wetlands, where there was floodplains, where it was clearly, and ironically, when you looked at it, those were also kind of the remaining properties that nobody's been developing, but eventually they were going to develop it. And so it was a way of saying, okay, these environmental resources, we want to make sure we definitely protect these. And then we develop zoning to kind of carve out those particularly environmentally sensitive resources specifically for those areas.
Thank you.
And that would be done by local.
Right.
And are we trying to establish a pathway or some kind of a greenway as opposed to isolated
Right,
spots?
so I think the EAC has always advocated or has been trying to connect some of your already established pathways as well as some of your parks. And so some of it could also be just identifying that in the plan. So it's actually there in a document as opposed to, I know it's been talked about, it's been different,
Yeah, so I mean, we have Ryder Park trails that could conceivably go through the Bethany Arts community, that could connect to the Mary Knoll trails, that could connect to the Briarcliff Peekskill Parkway, that could connect to T-Town. And we're, looking at a trail network where somebody could really go for a very long walk without actually encountering a car.
Right.
Or too many people.
And the timeline that's stipulated in this MOU is meant to be adjusted to the realities of what we're doing here and now.
Yeah, I mean, the grant itself is to develop the plan. So like something like a trail network, if it's in the plan, then you can start looking towards getting funding, through different grant processes. Or again, what's also very helpful is if you have sort of concepts down, if a particular property ends up before the planning board, they can say, you know what, in this particular plan, this trail network was identified. Is this something that could potentially be worked into the overall project?
Okay. I'm looking forward to continuing that work.
Great,
And that leads us to my favorite topic,
yes.
which I've been waiting for so many years. Is the Indian Brook Croton Gorge watershed overlay protection of our water source.
Yes.
And it is a very complicated piece of work that Valerie and the other 4 municipalities have been working on, and I'll let you describe that.
Yeah, so this project dates back to 2005 when the original committee was put together from the 5 different municipalities to look at identifying ways to protect the watersheds for both Indian Brook and Croton Gorge. So over the course of many years, the 5 communities have come to the conclusion the best way to do that is to actually develop a watershed protection overlay district. And this district would specifically focus on the Indian Brook and Croton Gorge watersheds. What it does is basically it identifies certain environmental resources that you want to protect. It focuses on implementing some more stringent stormwater practices as well as focusing on regulating activities within the watershed so that you can improve water quality as much as possible. Some of it that doesn't necessarily specifically relate to like the town of Austining, it really focuses on like some of the septic systems and stuff like that and trying to protect those. But this particular project kind of also aligns very nicely with a water source protection plan that the Village of Austining just recently adopted, that the town of Austining participated in. And they're now going to the next steps of identifying some implementation pieces. So this is another implementation piece in terms of water source protection. So the draft regulations that I provided you, I think in where Christy and I are trying to finalize where is would go within the town code. I think and it potentially might go into the zoning district, at least that's where the town of Portland is looking to include theirs. And so if that's the case, then we'd come back with you with where they would specifically be located. But basically, what we tried to do for each one of the municipalities, everybody has different definitions of water, of like wetlands. Everybody has slightly different definitions for stormwater. So, and a number of other like pollutants and some other steep slopes. So what we basically did, instead of trying to make it very complicated, it was decided that we were going to use very similar definitions and very similar applications that we already have existing. So we're going to try to prevent any sort of conflicts as much as possible by adopting this. But what it does do is it does provide those extra regulations and extra protections. And so, I provided you a map of the area, or the general area within the town of Austining that this overlay would fall upon. But then, as you can see in the map that was provided to you, there's a tremendous amount of area within the town of Portland and also Newcastle that would also fall under this overlay, which would have the benefit of protecting the Indian Brook watershed.
Are all the communities going to be adopting or looking at this particular draft?
Yeah, so basically the same draft is going out to all 5 communities with the nuances of their particularities. So for example, in the stormwater regulation piece, it specifically has in here for property for 5,000 square feet. So for example, it says for performance criteria, all land development activities that involve soil disturbance greater than 5,000 square feet shall comply with, and it refers to your stormwater management, erosion and sediment control chapter. For example, in the Village of Austining, they actually regulate at 2,500 square feet. So they're going to continue regulating at 2,500 square feet. We're now reducing right now, you only regulate at 1 acre. So this is being reduced down to 5,000 square feet within the overlay. So there's those little nuanced differences in between the different communities, but for the most part, that same provision is in all 5 municipalities.
Good, because I was talking with the Newcastle, Newcastle supervisor today. And explained to her how important this was and how it protects water for 44,000 people. Not to mention the Croton Gorge, and she's super excited, she's interested, and I sent her the draft that we have, said expect something similar from, your team member. And they're gonna start taking a look at it also. So I'm
Yes.
hoping, and I know Portland is with us, so I'm hoping that all the municipalities get together and adopt this quickly.
Yes.
It's been a long time coming.
Right, so I know for a fact that the town of Newcastle, town of Cortland's already started distributing theirs. The town of Newcastle is, Sabrina's actually bringing hers to her town board very shortly. And it has been a very collaborative approach with all municipalities throughout this process. But one of the things that we all wanted to make sure was that we weren't giving something to our town boards and our the attorneys that was going to have conflicts all over the place, and it was going to be confusing in order to figure out how to implement this particular thing.
Well, I appreciate your many, many, many years of work on this and all of its iterations. And, like I said, I told you before, this is one of the primary things that I really hope to get done as supervisors to see this come to fruition and get this watershed as protected as possible. So thank you very much for the work, and we'll all read it very closely. And I'll talk to my counterparts in the other towns and help them answer any questions about the importance of it and what it means to our community to, you know, have that clean resource available. I mean, water is irreplaceable, so the water resource is irreplaceable.
I know,
So,
Christie, so if the board is interested, we can go ahead and sort of basically finalize this as a final draft. And then if the board wants, we can, you know, eventually it has to go to the planning board for referral. So that would be something that the town board would have to do. And you could also potentially refer it out to the Environmental Advisory Council also for their input as well.
Do we need 100% participation for this to work? All the municipalities have to agree, right?
So, I mean, not necessarily. I mean, theoretically, each municipality is going to adopt it on its own, but ideally, yes. But the 5 municipalities have given their commitment, and I know for a fact, like Town of Cortland, Newcastle, you know, the Village of Ossining and the Town of Ossining are all, you know, and they're the ones that are really involved in the Indian Brook watershed. So I know that they're planning to move forward with their versions of, you know.
Good. Good idea.
One thing earlier, the question of whether or not to put this in the zoning code. One of the implications of that is that if you put it in the zoning code, then they can go to the zoning board for variances from these requirements. And if that's a mechanism the board wants to afford under this legislation.
so for instance, if somebody wanted to put a larger battery storage system or something like that, we could go for a variance.
If it's in the zoning code, yeah. And
Well,
generally,
we'll-
there
we'll
is,
listen to your recommendations.
I mean,
We'll hear your recommendations. So,
I think there should probably be some sort of waiver that's, if it's not a variance, just because, you know, you can't contemplate everything that's going to come up.
I
But
really want it to be a high bar though.
so then you may want to create additional standards. Sometimes we see in municipalities for like their wetlands, they'll have kind of like a variance on steroid standard where it's much more stringent because they want you to be able to demonstrate, because if this is just an area variance, then the standard may not be all that high.
Yeah, no, I really believe in protecting our watershed. And I think that there should be a very high bar for something that is potentially disruptive in any way.
I saw something recently in another municipality that I could say.
Okay, sounds great.
And then it'll be more akin to, you know, the board has a separate wetlands code, a separate stormwater code, so it'll be more like that.
Would some people be grandfathered in existing on their, or, so say somebody has a property existing and we adopt this, are they gonna have to adapt or adjust their?
Yeah, so we've heard, let me just find that because one of
There
the,
is a grandfather.
yeah, there is. And we wanted to make sure, like, 'cause we wanted to make sure that, you know, again, part of this is, you know, any sort of, you know, moving forward, like it's a very forward thinking thing. We didn't want to necessarily create something where we're gonna have to go back and say everybody has to change things
agree
right
with that.
now, right? So,
But one thing I noticed that I did like is, you know, making people pump out their septic tank once every few years, you know, just to make sure that that's not gonna overflow into the different watersheds or.
And so part of this is also going to have to be kind of an informational campaign and
Right.
getting that out there to the public so that they understand what the new standards are.
right, and we just had that water source protection plan. So there was a meeting today on that. And one of the things that they're actually targeting is the septic systems and septic system information. And so they're planning to develop some, we're planning to develop some informational for homeowners, specifically those that have septic systems, to say and to talk to them about the importance of the pump outs and getting their septic systems inspected and the requirements behind that. And that's something that's going to really be targeted in, more or less in the other municipalities that have a lot of septic, like Newcastle and Cortland.
Do some of those septic areas, the homes have the opportunity to tie into sewer in that area?
No,
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 there's no sewer.
There's nothing.
no.
Got it.
Anything? Good.
And just so that you know, there's one thing I just wanted to call out. So in terms of when we were talking about conservation resources, in here specifically for subdivisions, in this area, if you have subdivisions more than, I think it's six. Yeah,
lots.
it will have to be clustered. So therefore, it would require that kind of conservation in terms of.
And they're looking at amount of impervious surface, and I think Cortwood says something about increasing their lot sizes
Right,
to try to encourage, conservation.
Right. One of the things that we specifically just also, we looked at very carefully the zoning districts in each one of them, because the zoning districts are very different in each of the municipalities. So I wanted to make sure that we weren't agreeing to something that we were gonna have to upzone a lot of properties, or it was going to really affect like people that already have single family homes or developed homes that they couldn't potentially put additions on and stuff like that. So we could carefully looked at the zoning in terms of, and also like the business districts, because clearly the village of Austining and the town of Austining are more densely developed in the Indian Brook watershed than the town of Newcastle and the town of Cortland in those particular areas, not necessarily all of the town of Cortland,
Right.
but just in the watershed. So we were looking at that carefully to make sure that these things would be protective, but then it wouldn't necessarily be overly restrictive that people couldn't have use of their property.
Yeah, you're making me think about, I'm very aware that there's a lot of ADUs that are being planned in the town and the village by homeowners. Is this gonna affect them at all?
Right, so the towns, for the town ADU, no, it would not. Because, and the village of Austining doesn't have any ADUs, but I know the town of Cortland and I think the town of Newcastle might have ADU regulations, but no, it wouldn't necessarily affect those per se.
One more thing about the money, the 50 grand, we got awarded that? Or-
No, no,
Uh,
so this is, actually the town of Cortland, put the grant together, so the town Cortland is the one who's overseeing the grant. And I believe there's no cash match, I think it was all like in-kind services associated with it.
And the 50 grand, I'll get it done mostly too.
Well, so this is your final product, so I mean, it was part of a grant, but the money has more or less been spent, and so this is the final product is the law, and we're working towards getting it adopted.
So it's just Valerie's time for us,
Got it.
and Christie's time when it gets done.
Right.
Thank you for the update. Anxiously await the final product.
Yes.
And thank you so much for joining us and bringing us all these wonderful topics. And I'm glad that it worked out. We could do them all in one day. Okay. So that wraps up our meeting for our work session for tonight. Please join us on, thank you, the 26th for our legislative meeting at the courthouse. We adjourn for executive session for advice of counsel, litigation. I think we have one. And one. And one personnel. Okay, thank you.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you and have a good night. Happy spring.